Hi guys, and welcome to Fireside Chat with the Johnstons. I'm Danielle Johnson, and I'll be your host for today's episode. So if you have never listened to this episode before or this podcast channel, I own Twister Sports in Warrensburg, Missouri. We have competitive and recreational cheerleading, dance, tumbling, gymnastics, indoor batting cages, Ninja Warrior program, after-school program, and summer camp. What I'm going to talk about today involves the All-Star program. And so I'll give you just a little bit of history on my program and just so you kind of have a backing of where I'm coming from with some of my opinions as I go through the Open's new scoring system. Okay, so I started my program in 2012. And I was operating out of a community center and out of Whiteman Air Force Base. I was teaching recreational programming, and I had my first hire. Basically, I realized I'm starting to get 17 to 20 kids in a class. I cannot properly teach them stunting because there's just one of me and there's a whole lot of them. And if you've ever taught a rec class, that's the other thing. You know, they're not experienced athletes. They are new to the sport. They need you to spot on every stunt. They need a lot of help. And sometimes they get a little wild and it's like a little circus in your class. And so I made my first hire and I hired her to come help coach. And I think it was like the first practice, she said, we should do competitive cheerleading. And this was, I think at the time, it was like maybe 2011. Maybe it wasn't even 2012 yet. And I said, cool, let's do it. What is that? So I grew up in Northern Illinois. There are so many programs there today, but there were none in my area at the time. And so I really didn't know what competitive cheerleading was outside of maybe being a team and doing sideline and competing for who has the most spirit. We've got spirit. And so I just wasn't familiar with it. And so she explained it to me and showed me, and she had been on a level 4 team at the time before she joined the Air Force and made her way out to Missouri, which, guys, if you go back to 2010, level 4 back then was, it's kind of like a 4.1 and 2. I wouldn't even maybe say level 4. It was just the expectation at each of the levels was dramatically different. It's kind of funny. We have some athletes in the gym who are on my mini team and their moms cheered. And if I look back at the routines that their moms were doing, they were level 4 at the time, but there maybe were 2 standing tucks in the routine and a kind of a whippy layout here and there. And boy, they were just killing it at level 4 at the time. And so I go back and say all that because cheerleading has dramatically changed in the last 15 years.
We have come a long way together to be where we are today.
Well, anyway, she said, let's go ahead and start competitive teaming. And I was all about it. So I started learning, found a local competition. Thank goodness the event producer was so willing to teach me because I remember sitting in my car, pulling in my driveway and sitting in my car for hours, some nights, probably once a week even, just asking her questions and trying to learn the sport. These days, our event producers are probably way too busy for that, but she really loved kids. She loved cheerleading and she wanted to see it grow in Missouri. And so, Melissa, if you're listening to this, Melissa Morrison, thank you. You're awesome. Anyway, we started cheer. That season, I had about 22 kids. Somehow I made 3 teams, lots and lots of kids crossing over to multiple teams. I didn't even know that you were supposed to name your team. And so they called us out to the floor and they're like, Twister Tinies. And we just didn't know anything. And if you don't know anything, that's okay. That is how you start. You have to start somewhere. Thank God you guys have YouTube and TikTok and stuff like that, because of course we had YouTube back in the day, but I don't know that I would have thought to go to it to learn everything I needed to know. So that was how we started. And my program really stayed fairly small until about 2018. In 2016, we did go to D1 Summit. Back then, if you had 2 locations, you were D1 regardless of the number of athletes in your program. And so I think I had, 28 or 30 or so athletes of all-star cheerleading at the 2 different locations. I had 1 team at one and 3 teams at the other, and lots of crossovers. I used to say crossovers make the world go round because they allow you to have the teams for some of those athletes that would have otherwise left. Anyway, so I had that probably up until 2018. I started using the Next Gen sales funnel. That was the year Next Gen started, was 7 years ago. And I started using the Next Gen sales funnel that we developed by saying, what's working for Shelly and Dan? What's working for Danielle? What's working for Rihanna? And Rihanna and I had these like really great preschool programs and recreational tumbling programs. And so and birthday parties and summer camps and stuff like that. So we were able to contribute a lot to kind of building a lot of the processes that we did to make those successful. Well, Shelly was phenomenal at kind of building, this is what I do to get kids in the gym for All-Star program. So I took that funnel and I did what every good gym owner should do. I used it. I tried not to question things, even though that is not my nature. And I used it and I built my funnel off of that. My program, that was 2018. Of course, COVID kind of throws you off a little bit for most things. Like most people, by 2021, my numbers were actually better than COVID. However, today in 2025, I have about 155 all-star athletes. Some are hip hop and the remainder are cheer. The vast majority are cheer. And that spans across half year novice, full year novice, prep, and elite. So I won't go through those today because we do a lot of education on the sales funnel and different ways that you can get athletes in the door. But when I start talking about the open score sheet, know that I'm coming from a place where I feel like we had far less requirements on score sheets many years ago. You know, our first teams didn't have crop tops, but they could have. My tinies could have had crop tops. That was not a thing that you had to have those full length tops. That kind of became a big thing. And what they said, it was going to happen for like in a year or in 2 years ended up taking much longer so that people could transition without having to buy new uniforms. We didn't have bottom ages back then. There literally was no bottom age. My 14-year-old literally has cheered for 12 years because she was 2. She was literally the worst tiny. And I, for a period of time, even kicked her off the team because she's I joke to this day, she's the only tiny I've ever kicked off a team. But it's because she was 2 years old and we were out there doing forward rolls and motions and stuff like that. And she was in a shoulder sit. And I know now you think I'm crazy and you're going to turn off this podcast, but those were the days. And so when I look back, I talked about age grid in the last podcast. But when I look back at how things operated in 2012, 2013, 2014, stuff like that, today's score sheet, though it is far more sophisticated than what we had back then, reminds me a little bit of it. So I'm going to go through the things that I like and don't like regarding the new score sheet. I'm going to be very broad. I've dived into it a little bit, but I also don't want to get too confused because I need to operate for the final competition of the season and the All-Star World Championship. I need to operate out of the 2024-2025 score sheet. That said, I did sit in on the webinar that Craig Hallmark did with the Open. I was able to listen in, and I'm somebody whose opinions usually form pretty quickly, and then I have to think more about it later. So that was about a week ago. So a couple things that I do really like, and I understand some of these will be unpopular opinions. Standing tumbling, having the option to maybe have less people or split it up throughout different sections of the routine, love it. I understand that means, you're not going to have 12, 15 kids in one standing tumbling section doing the skills. I totally understand that. And I think I can understand the argument that we are making the score sheet easier. At the same time, there are times that I would love, I would love to put a certain standing tumbling pass in our opening, but then I'm like, why would I wear these kids out if I'm already getting, the skills? And it's really putting additional stuff in is potentially going to hurt my technique, but not necessarily increase my difficulty. That's one area that I really liked. I feel like it can allow us to create more visually appealing routines, more creative routines. Those are things that I think we did better back in, the early 2010s. I think we were better at creative visual routines because we had less requirements of certain things having to be in certain sections. I personally have always liked that running tumbling is composite. I think when you have a large team, it can be very hard. I think you don't get to use the creativity of transitions as much. There's really only so many directions you can tumble on a floor if you have a large team. We have not a large team, but our Youth 2 has about 14 kids on it, and they do a full team pass. And in the past, there's been no why would we do that? It's not really rewarded, with the exception that I definitely balance as a gym owner and a coach. I balance what is best for the team that maintains their morale and boosts the morale, what is best for my retention that keeps everybody excited to come back season after season, and what's best for the score sheet. And on this particular team, I had a lot of kids with really good tumbling. And so, am I losing technical points because a kid here and there maybe has bent knees or isn't fully blocking or their toes aren't pointed? Yeah, I probably am. But that's the balance we have accepted and agreed to as an ownership team when it comes to that particular team. However, I love that kids can be more creative. They can, if I have, a front walkover aerial at level 3, but she's the only one that really, that's the best pass for her, whereas the others can do their front walkover round off handspring tuck, I can play around with it. And it's been that way for a while, but I've always liked that. And so I feel like now we'll be able to do the same level of creativity and utilize those kids who maybe are not in the stunts. If you have 13 kids on a team, it's pretty great to have something that kid can do that's contributing to the score. And there's only so many running tumbling passes you need in a routine. So now if that can contribute with creative elements of standing tumbling, I think it's wonderful. Another thing that was on the score sheet for next season is that the elite skills have to be done in the same section. They can be synchronized or rippled, but they do not necessarily have to be the only elite skills. That said, they cannot be repeated. So a couple of years ago, this was actually the case as well. So that just in the last couple of seasons, that had changed to say it needed to be the same elite skill. I had a team in the Junior 2 division, which you guys all know it can be brutal, a couple of years ago at All-Star World. And I can't remember exactly what happened. Like somebody got injured a week or two before. We had to pull another base in, and they just didn't have the time to really get that stunt down. And I can't remember. I think we were doing like an inversion half up to body position, but it was a really quick pace, and we would have had to basically change both stunt groups. This was before you had to do the exact same pass for that elite, or not pass, the exact same skill for that elite section. And I said, let's turn this into a ripple. Let's have this group do this. And then this other group over here is going to do inversion to extension. And they're going to do it with this cool transition. And they're going to be moving. And it's going to give the visual on the floor. And I am no choreographer, okay? But it did look pretty cool. And it allowed them to get to their next section a little bit better and cleaner and stuff like that. And that team did go to day 2. They did really, really well at All-Star World. I think, in fact, the All-Star World Championship is how I am supposed to say that. I think that they maybe have placed the best of the teams from my gym at that event. And honestly, did it look a little weird they weren't doing the same thing in the same section? I don't know, maybe, but I think good choreography will compensate for that. It will give that more creative visual effect, and it will still allow you to hit a score sheet. So I personally really liked seeing that again. Again, I think it's going to lend to more exciting routines. It's going to give us more opportunities for creativity. Whereas today, creativity is on that score sheet. And oh my gosh, you guys, it is so hard to get it. I think it's hard to get it. I think we have one of the most creative choreographers in the industry. And I still think it's very challenging to find a judge that can say, no, I've never seen that before. Wow, I'm impressed by that, right? Especially when they're judging, 80, 100 teams, 150. I don't know how many they judge, but all of those teams in one day. Some of the comments that I have seen online were really not in favor of the loosened requirements for level 4 through 7. I will tell you, as a small gym in the middle of Missouri who competes primarily in the Midwest, somewhere, maybe as far north as Omaha or Des Moines, and as far west as Oklahoma City or Tulsa, and maybe we'll go to Nashville or Memphis or something like that, Louisville. South, we'll go to Dallas, but we don't do it all that often. So that's kind of my radius of where we would travel for competitions. Again, Dallas is one of those every couple of years, since our elite teams do the All-Star World Championship every year. So generally, I'm in the Kansas City and Branson area. And we were level 4 a few years ago. It was all girl, level 4, extra small, although I think that might have been before they had an extra small, but we would have been that. Anyway, we did not have competition at every event. It didn't matter if we were going to the 2-day events or the 1-day events or the events that had full production. That season, we just did not have direct competitors at all of our events. And I didn't anticipate that by moving from all-girl level 3 to all-girl level 4. I didn't anticipate that being an issue. The following season, I've done episodes on this before, and this is probably a good time of year. Maybe I'll do it again about what that felt like. I had several athletes leave us for a larger gym that season that would get them closer to a world's team, since we have not had that. But that season, or the next season, we went down to level 3 again as our top team in the gym. I remember parents asking, will we actually have more competitors now? And that was a hard answer, because I think at level 3, we tend to see plenty of teams, level 1, 2, and 3 here in the Midwest. As far as 4 through 7, I think you see level 4 teams. They're often 4.2, which is different. But, I would say it's not very common to see 5, 6, or 7. I don't know if I've seen a level 7 team all season at an event we've been to. So, of course, if you're on the East or West coasts that are more highly populated and you're competing with a particular event circuit, you may be seeing that more frequently. But for us, it was really great that the requirements have loosened a little bit for level 4, because my team will be, and we had already been considering going to level 4 next year. I really needed to know that we were going to have some competitors. So for me, it's great. On top of that, though, we were going to be taking a little bit of a risk. We are a military community. A lot of amazing level 4 or 5, actually level 4, 5, 6 athletes. I have a ton of them, but they've all moved on to another base. The Air Force has moved them. And so at my gym, it has taken us quite a bit longer to get up to those higher levels. So I really liked that some of those requirements have loosened. And I mean less in the stunting side and more in the tumbling side, because if I have one athlete get injured or get PCS, the Air Force move, in the middle of the season, that can really put a damper on, what our routine looks like, right? I don't just have standing tucks coming out of my ears. We do not. I do on my younger kids, and that's great for the future. But as far as my senior age kids, it will allow them to do something that they maybe otherwise will never have the opportunity to do living in such a small community. And I will say, years ago, when we had our level 4 team, I know we advanced to day 2 at the All-Star World Championship. I can't remember the details, but I believe they also did pretty well that year. And we did really well throughout the season, though I would have considered us a low level 4 when it comes to the difficulty. We were kind of minimally meeting the requirements, but we were highly focused on technique since it was their first season at level 4. So I'm really excited for this next season, though I think we could have met the Scoresheet requirements the way they are right now. I feel like it's just going to give us a lot of opportunities to grow. Those teams or those owners who are saying, man, my kids just busted their butts to get to level 4. I got to be honest, my kids have busted their butts to get to level 4. And sometimes they do, and then they go to a gym up in the city that has more of a bigger gym that has a world's team. Some of my kids bust their butt to go to level 4 and stay loyal to our program forever, waiting for their teammates to catch up, and the teammates move. They get orders for the Air Force and they move. I don't think we can truly say that anybody, regardless of the reason that they're moving to a level 4, 5, 6, or 7, isn't working hard to get there. I think it's just a series of circumstances, and we need to be happy that if teams are coming into that division and maybe shouldn't be there, it's going to certainly make your team do better in a ranking at a competition as a result. That said, it's opening the door for a lot of small gyms in small communities like mine. That's something that was much easier a few years ago before we saw the difficulty elements of the Scoresheet increase. It will allow us to be at that level and still focus on technique the way we do at levels 1 through 3. So, guys, I know that quite a few of the things I said may not be the most popular opinions, but I'm looking at this from, though I have 650 kids in my gym, my all-star program, when it comes down to elite athletes, is still fairly small, right? 155 kids, and I think about 60. I have 70 going to All-Star Worlds, including hip hop. So, about 70 kids in an elite program is really still very D2. So when we're talking about that, know that I'm coming from that perspective. Oh, and lastly, I'll say, I think it will help gyms that have to, or that cannot compete only a single circuit. I work with a gym in the Denver area, and though they probably could just compete as single, varsity or the open, it's the best for their program to be able to compete both. It's the best on scheduling. It's the best on affordability. It's the best on, just a variety of factors. And I really like that the score sheets they're almost a little bit more similar now, to where it's not going to be as challenging to compete both circuits if you choose to do so. Yeah, I really liked that. I know that I am not paid by the Open Championship. There have been other decisions over the years that I am less than thrilled with. In fact, some of the difficulty factors and the challenges on the score sheet, this is my con, so I'll just say that. The challenges on the score sheet the last couple of years, not being able to maintain the same score sheets, I think it creates a very challenging barrier for entry for new gyms that are opening. Unless you're coming from a program that has been very well versed in All-Star for a long time, and you were the director, or you were, one of the top coaches dealing with all those things, I think it is definitely a barrier for entry to have really challenging score sheets, because not only are these people trying to learn how to run a business and how to have staff, and even honestly how to coach certain things in cheerleading, because we all have our specialties, right? But as a small staff, sometimes you have to be good at everything. Not only those things, but then you have to relearn the score sheet every year. If we're looking at the flip side of this, of things that I am not crazy about, I'm hoping that after these changes are made, we can maintain a score sheet for a few years. But guys, I've been in this industry long enough to know that I have wishful thinking that we will maintain the things that we're doing right now. That said, roll with the punches, get good at adaptability. Understand that score sheet changes should never impact your program so greatly that you cannot operate if a change were to be so great that it kills your program altogether. That should never be the case. If that is the case, if you're listening to this and you're like, Danielle, no bottom ages is going to make my whole senior team go somewhere else. The change in the score sheet is going to make my whole team go compete this other circuit because they weren't a big fan of this anyway. Know that NextGen can help you. Not only can we help you to grow your All-Star program the same as I did, going from 28 kids to 155, but we can also help you with revenue diversity. We can help you expand those other programs. We can help with staff training. We can help you hire the right staff so that you want to train them and you don't mind paying to train them. There's lots of things that we can help with. So if that is something that interests you and you are ready to grow your gym, head over to nextgenowners.com/book and book a call. Lastly, if you are not in our Facebook groups and you are a gym owner, go to Facebook and in that little search thing up at the top, type in Cheer Gym Owners and you will find, I think, the best group out there on Facebook for gym owners. We also have All-Star Cheer coaches and owners for those owners who still are very passionate about the coaching side of things and the coaches themselves. Sometimes it's helpful to have other people telling those coaches the same things you were telling them, right? It reinforces the principles that you're teaching them. So, guys, with that, I thank you for listening to me. This was a fairly unscripted episode of Fireside Chat, and I look forward to having Justin with me on the next episode because this is called Fireside Chat with the Johnstons, right? So our schedules are coming back together pretty quickly here, and we will be able to record and get some great content coming up for you shortly. So thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you guys on the next episode.